Well, it's good to see everybody. My name is Aaron Farley, and I'm so excited I get to talk with you today. Now, I know you're looking at all of this, and you're like, that's not normally what the people on stage look like, all right? Let me reassure you, as part of the job description, I am our student director here at Sagebrush, which means I get the incredible opportunity to work with the high school and middle school ministry, which is called Remix. And so if you're like, well, what does a student pastor even do? You know, what do you do in a 9 to 5, man? Come on. People always want to know that. I'm like, I promise we do more than just playing dodgeball and eating pizza, all right? It's a big part of the job description, but we have a lot going on here on the weekends. Have you ever seen a family dragging their teenager out of the back seat of their car, and that kid's eyes are bloodshot red, the back of their hair is matted, because they have not slept in like 4 days. All they've done is play Fortnite, binge Netflix, watch TikTok, or all of the above. And their parents have got them by the back of that hoodie. And they're wearing that hoodie whether it's 10 degrees or 100 degrees, right? I mean, they have got shorts and Crocs on. Inclement weather means nothing to a teenager. They're wearing it no matter what. Their parent forces them in that student center, and they look at us with the most desperate of eyes. So just put a smile on their face and tell them something about Jesus, please, right? Parents, thank you for this very easy job you have tasked us with to deal with the teenagers. No, I absolutely love it, man. God called me to do it years ago. Personally, I believe we have the best student ministry in the world. I might be a bit biased, but I love what we are getting to see in Remix. Let me tell you a little bit about what's happened over this last year, because I know you don't get to see all of it. Over last year, we have seen 200 students come to accept Christ for the first time. Is that not exciting? It's awesome. We've seen 150 of those students follow up that decision by actually choosing to get baptized as well. I mean, it's just awesome what God has been doing in Remix, man. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm just so thankful that I've got to be some small part of that. Of all the choices teenagers can make in this generation, it's pretty powerful. They're still choosing Jesus. And so I want you to know that's what our church is doing. That's what you're getting to be a part of. And I'm just so thankful that God is moving in that Remix environment. Let me say this. If you're a high school or middle schooler and you're hearing me today, just go over all of our services. We have Remix. The student director would love to high-five you, talk to you a little bit, tell you about some of the future opportunities that we have that maybe you could check out and be a part of. If you're digital, you can always join us. We have an app designated to Remix. It's content specifically for high school and middle school, and we're still developing so much there over this next year. We're excited for that. If you're an adult in the room, and what I just talked about stirred you a little bit, I found out years ago and roughly 90% of people who make a decision to follow Jesus do so before the age of 18. So if you want to be a part of that home stretch, you're like, man, I want to make a difference in somebody's life. Not to say, well, obviously, serving at any of our opportunities will be a part of that. But in Remix, you're kind of part of that last moment before they decide to be, they become a young adult. They're in young adulthood. And so you may see some of these students in heaven with you one day. You may be a part of shaking the eternity of some of our young people's lives. If you want to do that, join us. You can text 505-922-9200, or you can go on the Sagebrush app, click Decisions, sign up to serve. We'll be in contact with you this week. We'd absolutely love to talk with you about how you can be a part of everything that we're getting to see God doing at our church. I want to tell you a little bit more about myself. I've been married roughly 7 years now this month to my beautiful wife named Hannah, and we moved here from the Southeast just roughly about 2.5 years ago. So it's been an awesome time. Everything is different here, by the way. The food's a little spicier as well. Now, I will tell you this too. I just celebrated a birthday actually this weekend. I turned 28 on Friday, and so that was pretty cool. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. My wife lovingly reminded me that means I've got 2 good years left. I've got 2 years in the tank. That's all I've got. Please be in prayer for me before I hit 30. But don't you worry. She turns 29 in just 3 months. I did not rob the cradle. I robbed the grave, all right? And there's a lot more jokes like that coming. So be in prayer for her even more so than me. Man, let me tell you a quick story today. I remember a time I went to a bachelor party. And you're like, man, I just got over the man bun, and now you're going to open with a bachelor party story. Don't worry. This is a Christian bachelor party. It was in the Southeast. So to add insult to injury, it was a redneck Christian bachelor party. If you're like, what do redneck Christian bachelors do? We decided we're going to go mudding, man, in Georgia. You wake up in the morning, you're wearing so many layers because it's freezing cold. By the afternoon, the sun is blazing, it's scorching heat. The humidity is at like 90%. So you are dropping sweat in places only God needs to know about, and we'll just leave it at that. And we had rented this four-wheelers that were just out of this world. I mean, these are the machines, full four-door, leather interior, surround sound audio, got every bell and whistle. And I was like, I don't even feel qualified to drive the hand-me-down Toyota Corolla from my mom. There's no way I'm gonna drive this expensive machine and wreck it or something today. So I got in the back seat. Well, there was a guy on this trip. It was a Christian bachelor party. Like most of us, we're staying out of trouble, we're not drinking, anything like that. But there was one guy, he had some not so Christian juice that morning, okay? Not apple juice, not orange juice. He had a few, sips. He decided he was qualified to drive this machine that day. I just completely forgot about it. I was in the back seat, dummy old me, just not thinking, just having the time of my life, sweating and everything else. He gets in the driver's seat, and I kid you not, I remember about 2 seconds in, because foot to the floor, pedal to the metal, just guns a-blazing off this first little stretch. And we come around this first curve. The back two wheels are coming off the side. All of a sudden, we are in the redneck Fast and Furious, We are in episode 90 or whatever they're on now. Dwayne Johnson is sitting in the seat next to me. Vin Diesel is like, for the family, right? We are going. And that is all great until we hit a mud pit at a speed you're not supposed to be going. And we go from the redneck Fast and Furious to the redneck Titanic just that quick. We start sinking. We're freaking out, unbuckling, jumping out of this vehicle. I remember thinking, why in the world did I let this guy drive for me today? Have you ever been there? You're in the back seat, holding back tears and prayers as the driver is sending a text or email with one hand, chugging a soda in the other, and they are blasting Taylor Swift on the radio. And you're like, who is driving as we swiftly, see what I did there, approach traffic? Well, today I want to talk about how in our personal lives, where have we got in the back seat? I don't mean in a real car. Maybe spiritually, mentally, emotionally. We have let some other influences or forces begin to drive our life, and we don't even know who we are or what we're doing anymore, where we're going, how we even got here. Can you think back to me just for a minute? Think of 2022. Last year, what all goals and aspirations did you have that you were gonna accomplish in 2023? Oh, this year I'm going to be the healthiest I've ever been. I'm going to be more disciplined in my life. I'm going to be at church. I won't miss it. I won't be late to anything. I am going to be strong. I'm going to get in God's word. I am going to have the best my bank account has ever seen. We had all these dreams, but somehow throughout the year, we became a little lethargic. Things slowed down for us just a bit. Next thing you know, we're in the backseat. If anything, we feel like we've been getting dragged along by life this last month or two of the year. You know what I mean? I know I've been there a lot of times. Today I want to talk about how do we put God in the driver's seat of our life. If we're not really careful, we'll let all these other influences come in and control us and drive us in ways we never expected. Think about a few of those with me. Maybe some of us, we've been letting personal pride, relationships, sex, money, media, power, influence, being lazy or just settling for subpar. And while all these influences, they're not inherently evil, if they're driving our lives, we're going to end up sinking. Today, let's talk about how do we put God in that seat? How do we give him the keys and let him take us to the path and the goals that we want to see in this next year? We're going to do that by taking a minute to look at the life of Moses. If you don't know much about Moses, here's a little bit of his background. Moses was born to a Hebrew family at a time when the Hebrews were enslaved to the Egyptians. So, what the Egyptians, they start getting really scared. They're afraid the Hebrews are going to revolt. So they decide they're going to kill all the Hebrew boys who are born. Well, Moses' mother's about to give birth. She's freaking out. There's no ultrasound. There's no gender reveal party. You don't know what's going to happen. She gives birth, and can you fathom your worst nightmare being having a healthy baby boy in your hands? Because that's what happens to her. She's scared. What are the Egyptians going to do? So as a last-ditch effort, she takes her son, builds this small basket, places him in it, and sends him upriver. She knew that just about every single day, Pharaoh's daughter bathed about that same time, and so she's just dreaming that she'd save her son's life. Sure enough, Pharaoh's daughter does just that. She picks this baby boy up and she raises him as her own. Moses is now raised by the Egyptians, but he and every single person he knows, they know he's truly a Hebrew. Well, as he goes through life, he starts seeing the Egyptians beating on his people, abusing his people. His own flesh and blood are enslaved, and it makes him so mad. One day he jumps in the driver's seat. He gets so mad in his own life, he goes out and he kills one of these Egyptian slave drivers. Tries to bury the body, thinks, nobody will really recognize or remember this. Till rumor starts getting around that Moses had killed this man. Moses is scared for his life now. What is Pharaoh going to do? He's raised Moses basically as his own son, one of his own family members, one of his grandsons. And now he's killed one of his own men? Moses runs off, goes into hiding, scared out of his mind, into this place called Midian. He's alone, he's stuck, he's empty. I want to pause the story just for a minute there because I wonder how many of us, we're going to relate with Moses a lot as we talk about this discussion today, but this is really where I think it all begins. How many of us do we connect with Moses in this moment? We have gotten the driver's seat of our life, and out of frustration, out of agitation, we have said, I've got this. I'm going to go the way I want to go, do the things I want to do. I'm in control. No one can tell me otherwise. I am going to the path that I want, and I have got this. When we do that, we have forgotten that Jeremiah 17 reminds us our own heart is one of the most deceitful resources we will ever lean on. So we get in that driver's seat. If you're anything like me, we start wondering who's all seeing us. Who's all noticing how fast we can go, how good we can look, how much money we can make, how esteemed our family is, how great we are. We get in that driver's seat, and so do all of our insecurities. When we're in that driver's seat, we somehow start thinking we've earned this. We deserve all that life has to offer. This is all for me. This is all for us. You ever said any of these statements? Oh, I deserve that raise. I deserve that promotion. I deserve what they have. I deserve my wife to wait on me hand and foot. Good luck to you guys on that one. I deserve a break. I deserve more money. I deserve better. I deserve it all. We're driving and we've gotten confused. We think the whole world, it revolves around us, me and me only. And when we do that, just like Moses, we're going to find ourselves running into a ditch, more stuck, lost, alone, empty, broken, confused than we've ever been. That's exactly where he is. Yesterday, he was eating like a king. Today, he's walking the sheep pastures. Moses doesn't know who he is anymore. He's devastated of the choices in the life that he now has because he got in the driver's seat and he wrecked. But let me tell you, this was crazy as Moses needed this time for growth. Do you think Moses could have ever heard from God when he was still in that Egyptian palace? All the money, all the girls, all the food brought to him every day, whenever and however he wanted it. Would Moses have ever been able to hear from God in all that busyness? And if he did, could he possibly believe God had something bigger for him than what he already had going in his life? See, in our life, there's a lesson there. A lot of times when we're at our worst, that's when we can hear God the best. Moses was positioned now to really begin to hear God and see things from God and understand that he could follow God to a better life than what he had given himself. If you feel stuck, alone, lost, empty today, broken, this year has mesmerized you, confused you, left you wondering who you even are anymore. Maybe for the first time in a long time, you're positioned to actually give God the keys. You actually know you can trust him. You could put him in the driver's seat. Today, maybe for the first time ever, you can give God that driver's seat that he has been wanting and needing, not to get you to the life you wanted, but to the life God actually created for you. Let's look at what God begins to speak into Moses. I think we can begin to track with him now. It says this, one day Moses was tending the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian. He led the flock far into the wilderness and came to Sinai, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire from the middle of the bush, and Moses stared in amazement. Though the bush was engulfed in flames, it didn't burn up. This is amazing, Moses said to himself. Why isn't that bush burning up? I must go see it. Pastor Charles Stanley talks about how just like God used a burning bush for Moses, a lot of times he'll use a burning bush in our life too. This is a really cool moment in Scripture because I'm like, I don't think God could have called Moses in any more clear way. Like this is a revelation of God, speaking through a burning bush that won't burn up. Can you imagine you're out walking your dogs or riding bikes today around the park that you go to or whatever with your family. All of a sudden a bush is on fire out of nowhere. I mean, I'd start calling 911, try to get the fire department, let them know. Hey, our neighborhood's in danger, our family's in danger. We don't want this to get out of control. Come get a hold of it before something worse happens. Till 15, 20 minutes in, you start realizing, well, none of the leaves are burning up. Nothing's happening. There's no danger here. You probably hang up the phone and start videoing for TikTok and be like, I'm seeing a feat of nature. This is a miracle. It's exactly what happens for Moses. And it says he stares in amazement. That tells us that Moses' jaw dropped. Can you picture Tom and Jerry, the jaw dropping to the floor? One of those moments. We've all had moments like that in our life. Married men in the room. I know you remember when your wife walked down the aisle, I know your jaw dropped. And ladies, if it didn't, or if he doesn't seem like he's remembering, take that elbow, dig it right in his rib cage right now. That sparks my memory like nothing else when Hannah starts doing that. Single guys in the room. I saw plenty of your jaws drop today as that young lady walked down the aisle in front of you, all right? And right now is a good time to wipe that drool up and get in prayer. Let Jesus take the wheel, all right? You can talk to her after service. Any hungry people in the room? I know, we got anybody? Okay, that's my people, thank the Lord. Hungry people in the room, I know you. You're like me. We're going into a new year. You've got a diet. You've got a budget. You're getting 3 soft tacos at your next meal. That's it. Nothing will shake you from that. 3 soft tacos, that's all I'm getting. That's all I'm going to do. Till all of a sudden, they bring out that sizzling plate of fajitas. You know what I'm talking about? You can hear the crackling, but you can barely hear yourself think over the angels singing from that waiter's hand, oh, as they walk by. And all of a sudden, your jaw drops not only at the food, but when that bill was $40 more than budget, right? We have all had that moment a couple times. I say all that to remind us that when God calls us or directs something in our life, our jaws should drop just the same. When you're in His will, it is going to be mesmerizing, the life that He has called you to. But I know what you're thinking. Well, Aaron, when I walked out of my front yard today, if my neighbors, all those overgrown weeds and bushes that have been there for years, if God would set them ablaze, you better believe I will listen. I'll bow down and worship. I'll do whatever He says. But God's not going to speak to us the exact same way He did for Moses. Pastor Charles Stanley also says, will God use a burning bush in your life like the one He did for Moses? No, but one that would grab your attention? Yes. Can you think of some of the interesting directions God might be using in your life? Did something in your schedule or job just change? Was that God freeing you up to notice Him? Did you wake up in the middle of the night this week? If it wasn't the sizzling fajitas coming back for round 2, maybe God wanted you to spend some uninterrupted time with Him. Did you have a new person come into your life or a life-changing coincidence? Maybe it wasn't that coincidental. Maybe God placed these moments and these people to direct us and call us to a new life, to a new path, that if we're not being really cautious and reflecting on time with Him, we could very, very easily miss. I want you to begin to see now, God calls Moses out of Midian, out of this terrible place he's been in, with an amazing call. But now let's see what challenges He placed before him. It says this, the Lord told him, I've certainly seen the oppression of my people in Egypt. I've heard their cries of distress because they're harsh slave drivers. Yes, I'm aware of their suffering. So I've come down to rescue them from the power of the Egyptians and lead them out of Egypt into their own fertile and spacious land. It's a land flowing with milk and honey, the land where the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites now live. Look, the cry of the people of Israel has reached me, and I have seen how harshly the Egyptians abuse them. Now go, for I'm sending you to Pharaoh. You must lead my people Israel out of Egypt. Isn't this crazy? God calls Moses, not just some small change, not just some mediocre move. Oh no, when God drives, it's life-changing. See, God had called Moses not only change his whole own life, but the entire nation of Israel. He's about to bring people out of slavery. I mean, that is a massive move in history even. I want you to get this. When God calls you, He is not going to call you just to settle for something. He has not called you just some mediocre life. If you've been going through this life wondering, is this all it has to offer? I promise you God has more. When you begin to discover your purpose and all God designed you to do, He will place you on the adventure of a lifetime. There is nothing more satisfying than being in God's will. And so I wonder how many of us are we going to begin to pursue that? God's called us to leverage every opportunity, every moment, every financial blessing, every relationship for Him, but instead have we been letting those things control us? Now, I know this sounds big, it sounds kind of crazy, it sounds a bit wild. How could I ever step into that amazing of a call? But it's very practical. All it takes is a small conversation. Hey, why don't you come and check out this service with us, hear the worship, hear the message. We could grab some food afterward and talk about it. Hey, God's been changing my life, my family's life. He's been making me a better man, a better leader, a better parent. What if you joined us and been a part of this? Hey, why don't we open God's Word together? Hey, why don't we start our workday today with a quick 5-second prayer? God bless us and be with us today, and we thank you. I found in my life that when I pray for people, even the most staunch skeptics are always pretty interested in me being willing to pray for them. But see, a lot of us will do what Moses does. God has placed this audacious call in front of his life. But all Moses does is he makes excuses. How many of us, our hearts just sink when we think about that? Well, I love to make a difference, but I can't be the one to vocalize it. I love to make a difference. I love to say some of those things or do some of those things, but I don't know what to pray. We have so many excuses just like Moses. I want to take a moment. We're going to read 5 excuses Moses makes real quick. I wonder how many of us will say, yeah, that might be like me too. Moses protested God, who am I to appear before Pharaoh? Who am I to lead these people, Israel, out of Egypt? So Moses starts with God, I just can't. There's no way it could be me. How am I possibly going to do this? And God reminds him that by his strength, that Moses will be able to. Well, Moses comes back and protests again. If I go to the people of Israel and tell them, the God of your ancestors has sent me to you, they will ask me, well, what's his name? Then what should I tell them? Moses is like, okay, God, but what God sent me? There's a million of these gods and everything everybody's worshiping. How am I going to tell them it was you? And God gives him a really cool answer. He says, I am who I am. It's reminding Moses that for all time, history, and all upcoming eternity, he is the only God worth being called from. Well, Moses comes back and protests again. What if they won't believe me or listen to me? What if they say, the Lord never appeared to you? Moses is like, God, what if they say, a burning bush? Yeah, I've heard that one before, Moses. Okay, buddy, what were you doing out there in those woods, right? And this is where God actually gives Moses some clear signs. He takes his staff, throws it on the ground, it turns into a snake. Back up again, it's a staff. He can put his hand in his cloak and back out. There's a skin-eating disease. Back in and back out, he's healed. He can pour the water of the Nile River on the ground. It turns into a puddle of blood. God literally gives Moses some miracles. So when he goes before Pharaoh, all of a sudden, he truly has signs. And I would be like, maybe this is enough for me. I might have made a few of these excuses. But still, Moses goes back and pleads again with the Lord. Lord, I'm just not very good with words. I never have been. I'm not now. Even though you've spoken to me, I'll get tongue-tied and my words get tangled. Well, God, even if I go and you give me the signs, I still won't know what to say. My mouth is just not going to move right. God actually responds to this moment. He's like, who put the tongue in your mouth to speak? And finally, Moses comes back, and I think we get to the root of the problem here. Last one. Moses again pleads with God, Lord, just send anyone else. Doesn't that really sum it up? Moses didn't want to be the one to make the difference. To really sum it up, he just didn't want to be the one to have to step out of his comfort zone and to do something that could be impactful for somebody else. We actually see God begin to get frustrated with Moses. If you're like me, I'm like, I am too. I'm like, Moses, come on, get it together, man. You got this. You can do this. You can get it together. God's given you these signs, these miracles. Come on, man. You can do this. But what I've learned in my life is when I'm waving my finger at someone else, a lot of times I forget there's three fingers pointing back at the one who's really caused the problem. I'm deflecting my own issues onto someone else. I'm making all excuses myself, but I want to get mad that Moses is. See, we see Moses in perfect 2020 vision, We can see all of his history. We can see everything he did, everything he became, everything in the middle, where he followed God, where he did it. And so due to that, we kind of see what's right and wrong. We get perspective that he doesn't have. Can you imagine if you could see that in your own life today? If you could zoom out 10,000 feet and look at who you are. If you could click the 0.5 button and zoom out like we all had to do at Christmas time because we ate too much. So we had to kind of, get a little bigger picture there. If you could do that in your own life and you could see everything about who you are, all the good, all the bad, all the ugly, and everything in between, I know I'd start getting pretty mad at myself. Aaron, why did you not talk to that person? Why didn't you go out of your way to serve at the church today? Why did you prioritize how much money you made over making a difference? Why did you not talk to that person and reach these people? Why did you walk by? Why did you not pray for that person who desperately needed it? I think I would get pretty mad at myself. I'm getting mad at myself even now thinking about how many opportunities I've missed because I made excuses. Here's the thing about excuses. If we could learn from Moses, our excuses, they only get us further from God's goals. Do you really know what an excuse is? I don't know if you see this in the dictionary, but if we could pretty much sum it up in the Bible, our excuse is just where we have a lack of faith in God. When we say, no, God, I could never go there. I could never be the one. I could never say the right thing. You could never open that door. That's what you're telling God. He's just not big enough. Oh, God, I could never be the one. God, you could never use me. That's what you're telling God. God, you could never open the doors. You could never swing wide the gates. God, you could never open these opportunities that I dream of or wish for. You're just not big enough. My excuse shows where I have a lack of faith in God. It kind of shows where my faith really is sitting. So today I wonder, we have talked a lot about how we haven't put God in the driver's seat. What do we do to put him in that seat? 3 quick ways to reflect, remove, and respond. Number 1 is to reflect. There's many of us, I think we need to reflect on where are the burning bushes in our life that we have been missing. Where has God been trying to speak or lead or direct or open doors in our lives that we have completely blown off or just not even seen him because we haven't spent time and noticed and been in prayer every day, been intentional with our life to reflect and hear from him. Because once we reflected, the natural thing is then to remove. If you're hearing from God and trying to let God lead your life, I promise you we will have to remove some things in our life that have been holding us back. Maybe for some of us, it's some distractions. Maybe some of us will have to remove some people we've been around, some places we've been going, some things we've been doing. But if we're going to really put God in the driver's seat, we got to remove anything that's been in the way so lastly we can respond. And we can respond by making an excuse, or we can respond by making a difference, but it's almost impossible that we will do both. We have to respond in action. We have to respond today by saying, what goal do I want to set that I will not let anything shake me from? Who do I need to talk to? Where do I need to go? What do I need to do? What do I need to make a priority in my life? And I'm going to have to cut some things out to respond in action today by the choice and decision of what I will make and who I am and what I'm going to do. But unfortunately, so many of us in the room, statistically speaking, will hear a message like this, but nothing will change for us. We'll hear that stirred up message. I know I've heard this so many times, but nothing will change about our life or our discipline. I imagine there's a coach and a player who may be hearing me today, who thinks of the God-given ability they have to do what they're doing. And they were going to do it because they wanted to make a difference. They wanted to be a leader. They wanted to be a guide. They wanted to help other people. But somehow they got worried about the win-loss column, how good they could be, how much following they have, that all the excuses run in instead. I imagine there's a couple ladies in the room who think of that opening conversation at work every day or right around the lunch table. And they're all having fun, just kind of being chatty and having a good time. And they know in those moments they have felt the nudge to tell someone about the Spirit of God, to tell someone about coming to church, to tell someone about what God has been doing, but they just can't seem to get it out because they made an excuse why they don't want to hear it. I imagine there's a parent in the room who thought of that daughter, that son, that if they could just quit trying to keep up with the Joneses, if they could get home from work just a little earlier and quit staying so late, they could quit worrying about how much more is money they could make as opposed to the life that they have been called to change, that God has blessed them with right there. But instead, we'll keep going back to the status quo. I imagine there's a lot of young people who I know I can relate with this, who will make excuse after excuse after excuse after excuse after reason after wonder after why we will not get out, why we will not step up, why we will not serve, why we will not lead, why we will not go out of the way for those who desperately need it. As I was thinking about this, I decided, you know what, I think I'd write a list out of some of the reasons I know I have made excuses, because I imagine I'm not the only one. Have you ever said these things with me? Well, you know what, God, I want to do something, but I just can't. That's how Moses started, and I think that's how I start today too. God, there's a million reasons why I cannot do all this. Here's some of those why. Because God, if you just let me do it tomorrow, I'll be ready. You ever put something off? Well, God, give me a day. Give me a week to make it right. Give me a month to go a little bit deeper with you so I know what to say. God, when I graduate, when my kids graduate, when life slows down a little bit, then I'll do it. Because right now, I just don't have the time. I'm too busy. I mean, God, you see my schedule. You know my life. When I get home, I got this, I got there, I got to go here, I got to move. There's no way, God, I can make more time to spend with you. There's no way I could possibly get up a tad bit earlier. There's no way I could ever, be at the church more. I just don't have the time, God. I imagine there's many of us who say, well, you know what? No one wants me to do it anyways. If I begin to speak and lead someone and tell them about the good news of Jesus, well, if they start asking questions back, I don't know. That's a big book on the Bible. How am I supposed to answer all these things that they have going? There's no way I'm qualified or know the answers. No one wants me to do it anyways. And if I won't, I imagine someone else will. I know I've said this a million times. Oh, God, well, if somebody else, will jump up and speak up, well, then, hey, I'll jump in right with them. God, listen, if the other parents from my kid's sports team, if they'd start leading a prayer after the game or something, God, I'll be right beside them holding hands. Yeah, God, I'll invite him to church if someone else in my neighborhood would spark that conversation or we got a group together or something. I'm waiting for someone else to do it. I'm waiting for someone else to spark the change. Because I think a lot of us, if we could sum it up, we just don't feel qualified. I imagine my list, if I was going to keep on writing it, fill up a few pages. Would yours? Of the excuse after the reason, after the wonder why I could not step out, or I walked by someone, or I made another reason why I couldn't. When I begin looking at this list, it kind of starts looking like an assignment I turn in for work or for school or, whatever. Maybe some of your kids are turning an assignment like this. It kind of begins to look a little bit like this. But if this is the assignment that defines me, that defines my life with God, my walk, my journey with Christ, I unfortunately feel like this is what it's going to look like up top, a failure. And can I tell you this? The reason why so many of us won't do something is the fear of failure. We have failed before. We're too afraid to fail again. We don't know what the future holds, so we're not willing to risk it because what if that is what defines our life? God, I'm unqualified. I'm going to fail. Let me tell you, there's one good thing about an F. You're like, what possibly could there be about an F? I learned this a long time ago, much to my parents' demise. It's very easy to turn an F into an A. You see that? One squiggly line. You know what I mean? Some of the parents are freaking out right now. They're like, that's what my kid did before Christmas break, but you can deal with them after service, all right? Here's the thing. Just as quickly as it is to fill in that A, let me tell you this. God can change your life around from whatever failure or excuse you've been making to make a difference for him. It's that easy. Where you've been saying, I can't, God tells you you can. Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Do you believe that? Amen. Do you believe God's power is within you? Because you can do this today. You say, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. Matthew reminds us we've got to make the most of the seconds we have. I mean, we are not promised tomorrow. We're not even promised another hour. Like every second we get, it's a gift and we will never get it back. We have got to make the most of this today. Well, I don't have time. Man, I've said that so many times, but we have to make the time. How much stuff do we make time for? I don't know about you, but I always get that little timesheet, every week on my phone that tells me how much time I wasted. That's what it pretty much sums up for me. How much time do we make for the Netflix show we gotta watch, the sports game we can't miss, the place, that big dinner we have to go to? We will make time for what we want to make time for. We have to begin to prioritize the things of God, remove some other stuff out of the way so we can make time for him. Those of you who have been feeling no one wants me to do it anyways, I want you to hear this today. You are wanted, you are called. Man, God sees that. If you will step out in faith for him, just like he tells Moses, God will give you the words to say. He will give you the strength to be the one. You may not know all the answers, but just say, hey man, listen, let's just pray and figure this out together. God does want you to be the one. Follow me on this one, because when you've been saying someone else will do it, I want you to hear this. What if you are someone else's someone else? What I mean by that is when you've been waiting in that group for someone else to step up and to stand out, you've been wondering why no one else would be the difference there. You've been waiting for someone to spark the conversation about church or start the conversation about God or something. What if God put you there and has been nudging that on your heart because you are the someone else that group has been needing? Because when we've been summing it up that I'm unqualified, I heard this a long time ago. God does not call the qualified, but he certainly qualifies the called. And you're called today. You are qualified today. So what action do you need to take? What do you need to change in your life? What step does this lead you to do? What do you need to do today? Well, I imagine there's many in the room. Maybe you never accepted Christ. Maybe you don't know Christ watching today. That's the first step in all this. And man, what an amazing way to end a year. To say all these excuses, all these reasons I wasn't sure, I didn't know why, but I want God to begin to change my life into this A, to begin to help me figure it out. Today, we love for you to go talk to some of our decision counselors. Right after the service, there will be a million excuses why you won't want to do it, but do not let those trump why God has called you to do it. Go out there and begin to discuss with these decision counselors what it looks like to accept Jesus. He will set you on this adventure of a lifetime. If you're watching today, all you have to do is text 505-922-9200. Call in. We want to talk with you about this. Maybe there's many in the room who say, well, I've been wanting to get baptized. Our church talks about that a lot, and we talk about the excuses we make a lot. Because there's usually a big list of why we don't want to get baptized. I don't want to get in front of everybody. Nobody can see my feet, like that. I hear that all the time, We have so many reasons. But what an amazing gift to start 2024 to say, I'm done with the excuses. Today, God, I follow you. I choose to obey by getting baptized. Well, let's be honest. It's New Year's Eve weekend. There's many of you in the room. You've accepted Christ. You've been baptized. But today, something was stirring in your spirit and your soul. There's something you left behind in this last year that you don't want to let that happen again. I can't speak directly to that, but God, you and God know exactly what that is right now. Maybe there's some of you, before you leave this building, you need to get on the phone with someone you haven't talked to in a while. Let them know you love them, you forgive them. It's time to move forward with that relationship because you don't have any more time to waste. Maybe there's some of us in the room who we need to delete something off our phone that's been holding us back. Maybe there's some of us that are hearing this conversation today that you know that you cannot go another year without setting a real goal or two and finding someone who will come alongside you for the first 60, 90 days so you guys set that as a standard of your life this year. I don't know what it is for you today, but I know this. You're called, you're qualified. We can make an excuse or a difference, but let's put God in the driver's seat. Would you pray with me? God, I show up every one of us today to reflect on anything, God, in our life, to be more intentional about our time with you. I know, God, there's been so many times I can make excuse after excuse after excuse. I could make a list. I could write a book of excuses. But God, today you have called us just to reflect, to remove, so we can respond in action to you. I pray for anyone in the room who has felt the weight of the world on their shoulders when they walked in here. They felt like they just couldn't be the one. They just didn't know enough. They're too old. They're too young. They don't have the answers. They're not right enough. They've done too much in their past. Help them to realize that you do not call the qualified, but you will certainly qualify the called. Help them to walk out of here with their head held high, pursuing and going after you. And may this year be the strongest and best we've ever seen. Not because of anything that could have happened by accident, but because we went after you. We put you in that driver's seat. Help us leave the excuses behind so we can make a difference. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.